The great chamber of the Galactic Council was the largest room Elena Vasquez had ever seen. It stretched upward for nearly a mile, filled with floating platforms where representatives from 400 different species sat in judgment of younger races. Light from distant stars poured through crystal windows. The air hummed with translation devices working in 10,000 languages. Elena stood alone on the speaking platform at the center of it all. She was small compared to most of the aliens watching her. Her simple black uniform looked plain next to their flowing robes and glittering armor, but she kept her back straight and her voice steady. "Earth requests full membership in the Defensive Pact," she said. "We offer our resources, our technology, and our loyalty to the Council." Silence followed her words. Then, slowly, a sound began to spread through the chamber. It started with the Varathi delegation, their purple tentacles shaking in what Elena knew was laughter. It spread to the Moravians, whose crystal bodies chimed with amusement. Soon, hundreds of species were laughing at her. High Arbiter Kethvaran raised one of his forearms. He was the leader of the synth hegemony, a race of beings who had merged their bodies with machines millions of years ago. His metal face showed no expression, but his voice carried clear mockery. "The humans wish to protect the galaxy," he said. "How wonderful. How sweet." More laughter filled the chamber. Kethvaran waved his hand, and a massive holographic display appeared above Elena's head. Images began to flash across it, images pulled from Earth's cultural databases. "Let us examine what humanity brings to our great alliance," the High Arbiter said. The first image showed a dragon breathing fire over a medieval castle. Then came a painting of Zeus hurling lightning bolts from the clouds. A Japanese sea serpent coiled around a ship. Norse warriors dying in battle and rising again in golden halls. Hindu gods with dozens of arms holding weapons. Egyptian jackals guiding souls through darkness. "Monsters," Kethvaran said. "Gods of thunder and death. Demons hiding in shadows. Warriors who cannot die. This is what humans think about. This is what fills their stories and dreams." He turned his metal eyes toward Elena. "Every species in this chamber put away such childish beliefs millions of years ago. We learned that the universe operates on logic and physics, not magic and fear. But humans? You still tell your children stories about creatures hiding under their beds." The laughter grew louder. A Varathi delegate spoke up, his translator turning gurgles into words. "They are barely 12 years removed from their own planet. They still believe in invisible forces controlling their lives. How can they protect anyone when they are afraid of their own shadows? Their biology is weak," added an Moravian, her crystal voice sharp. "They cannot survive in vacuum. They cannot see most light spectrums. They live for less than a century, and yet they dream of immortal warriors and all-powerful gods. It is compensation for their inadequacy." Elena listened to it all without speaking. Her face remained calm. Inside, she was counting every insult, every laugh, every dismissive wave. Kethvaran pulled up more images. Human soldiers in ancient armor. Viking ships crossing stormy seas. Samurai facing impossible odds. Spartans at Thermopylae. "Your own history shows your obsession with death," he said. "You celebrate those who die in hopeless battles. You build monuments to defeat. What kind of species teaches its children that dying is glorious? A species that has known nothing but struggle," Elena finally said. The chamber quieted slightly. The High Arbiter tilted his head. "Explain." Elena took a slow breath. "Earth is not a gentle world. Our planet has frozen, burned, flooded, and poisoned us. Asteroids have struck our surface. Plagues have killed billions. We have fought each other for resources, for land, for ideas. Every generation of humans has faced extinction. And this makes you qualified for the Defensive Pact?" Kethvaran asked. "I'm simply explaining our stories," Elena said. "You see primitive fear. We see survival lessons. Every monster in our myths taught our ancestors something important. Every hero showed them how to face darkness." "Poetic," the High Arbiter said. "But poetry does not stop invasion fleets. Poetry does not protect borders." "No," Elena agreed. "It does not." Kethvaran spread his arms wide. "Then, we are in agreement. Humanity is not ready for the Defensive Pact. Perhaps in another 1,000 years, when you have grown past your childhood fears, you may ask again." The vote was quick. 400 species rejected Earth's petition. Most did not even bother voting, they simply ignored it. returning to their own conversations. Elena bowed her head. The Council's wisdom is noted. Earth withdraws its petition. She turned and walked toward the exit. Behind her, the aliens had already forgotten she existed. They spoke of trade routes and mining rights and the endless small matters that filled their ancient lives. A young Malorian delegate caught up with her near the door. The Malorians were a gentle species, soft-bodied beings with large dark eyes. They had been members of the Council for only a century, and they had always been kind to the human delegation. "I am sorry, Ambassador," the Malorian said. His voice was like wind through grass. "They do not understand your people." Elena smiled at him. It was a strange smile, not angry, not sad, almost satisfied. "No," she said. "They do not. Perhaps if you explained more about your culture, showed them your art, your music, that will not be necessary." The Malorian blinked his large eyes. "I do not understand." Elena reached out and touched his arm gently. "Your people are good, Ambassador. Kind and peaceful. I hope that never changes." "Ambassador Vasquez, you speak as if something is about to happen." Elena looked back at the great chamber one more time. Hundreds of species, thousands of delegates, millions of years of collected wisdom. They had mapped every star in the galaxy. They had unlocked the secrets of matter and energy. They thought they understood everything. But they did not understand humans. "Tell me," Elena said softly, "has the Council done anything about the Zenthari Dominion?" The Malorian's skin rippled with discomfort. "The Zenthari are difficult. The Council prefers to negotiate with them, to offer tribute. It maintains peace. The Zenthari are expanding toward Malorian space. Your people have noticed this, yes?" The young delegate looked down. "We have petitioned the Council for protection. They say they are considering our request. They have been considering it for 5 years. These things take time." Elena nodded slowly. "Yes, they do. But time is running out, Ambassador. For all of us." She pressed a small device on her wrist. It sent a single coded message across the vast distance of space, bouncing through relay stations until it reached a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy. The message contained only 5 words. "They do not believe us." She did not wait for a response. She already knew what it would be. Far away, in hidden shipyards buried beneath moons and asteroids, that message was received. Officers looked at each other. Engineers put down their tools. Admirals opened sealed orders. The Galactic Council had laughed at human myths. They thought dragons and demons were signs of weakness. They thought humanity's obsession with monsters and heroes was primitive foolishness. They were wrong. Those myths were not about fear. They were about what humans could become when fear was not enough. They were instruction manuals written in story form, passed down through 100,000 years of survival. And now, in the darkness between stars, something was waking up. The old gods were putting on new armor. The monsters were learning to fly. Elena smiled as she walked away from the council chamber, leaving the laughter behind. Let them laugh. Let them think humans were foolish children afraid of the dark. Soon enough, they would learn the truth. Humans were not afraid of the dark. Humans were what the dark was afraid of. 3 months after the council rejected Earth's petition, Fleet Admiral Marcus Stone stood on a platform floating in the frozen void of Europa. Below him, hidden beneath miles of ice, was the largest shipyard humanity had ever built. The shipyard did not officially exist. No Galactic Council records mentioned it. No alien sensor had ever detected it. For 20 years, humans had been building something in secret, and today, Marcus would see if those 20 years had been enough. He pressed his hand against a scanner, and the ice beneath his feet became transparent. What he saw made his old heart beat faster. Ships, hundreds of ships. Warships of designs no alien had ever seen, built with technologies humans had never shared with the Council. They floated in vast underground oceans kept liquid by thermal generators, waiting in silence. Admiral Stone. A young officer approached him. The fleet commanders are assembled. They are ready for your inspection. Marcus nodded and followed the officer to a transport pod. As they descended through the ice, he thought about the message Elena had sent from Nexus Prime. They do not believe us. Good. The Council thought humans were primitive. They thought human myths were signs of weakness. They did not know that those myths had been teaching humans the same lesson for thousands of years. The universe is hostile, and survival belongs to those willing to become monsters. The transport pod emerged into a massive cavern lit by artificial suns. Thousands of engineers and soldiers moved between ships, making final preparations. On a central platform, 6 admirals stood at attention. Marcus recognized each of them. They were the best commanders humanity had produced, veterans of Earth's endless wars, trained from childhood to fight against impossible odds. "Report," Marcus said. Admiral Chenwei stepped forward. She commanded the Leviathan Corps massive carrier ships that could sustain siege warfare for years. Each Leviathan was a city in space, carrying fighters, troops, and enough supplies to outlast any enemy. "Leviathan Corps ready, sir." 12 carriers, full complement of fighters and marines. Admiral Jackson followed. His skin was dark, his eyes hard. He led the Valkyrie wings, fast attack squadrons, crewed by pilots who had merged their nervous systems with their ships. They could react in microseconds, moving as one with their machines. Valkyrie wings ready. 300 fighters, all pilots linked and synchronized. Admiral Yuki Tanaka commanded the Fenrir Pack stealth destroyers equipped with weapons that broke the laws of physics as the Council understood them. Gravity well disruptors, phase shift torpedoes, weapons built from theories the aliens had dismissed as impossible. Fenrir Packs ready. 60 destroyers in silent running mode. The enemy will not see us coming. Admiral Okonkwo led the Olympus dreadnoughts, humanity's flagships, carrying weapons of last resort. The Council would have banned these ships if they knew they existed. They were not built for war. They were built for ending wars. Olympus Division ready. 4 dreadnoughts, all systems operational. The last 2 admirals commanded support fleets, repair ships, medical vessels, supply carriers. The less glamorous parts of war, but no less important. Marcus looked at them all. These people had given their lives to a secret they could never speak of. Their families did not know where they worked. Their friends thought they had ordinary jobs. They had sacrificed everything for this moment. "You know why we are here," Marcus said. "The Council has refused to protect our allies. The Zenthari Dominion is preparing to invade Malorian space. In 2 months, a peaceful species will be wiped out while the great powers of the galaxy watch and do nothing." He paused to let his words settle. 20 years ago, humanity's leaders made a decision. We could not trust the Council to protect us. We could not trust anyone but ourselves. So we built this fleet in secret. We developed weapons they said were impossible. We trained soldiers they said were too fragile to fight. He gestured at the ships floating around them. They laughed at our myths. They called us children afraid of the dark. They do not understand what those myths really are. They are not fairy tales. They are promises. Promises that when darkness comes for us, we will become something worse. Admiral Tanaka spoke up. "Sir, the Zenthari fleet outnumbers us 3 to 1. Even with our weapons, this will not be an easy fight." "No," Marcus agreed. "It will not. Many of us will die, perhaps most of us. But that is what humans do, Admiral. We fight when the odds are against us. We sacrifice ourselves for those who cannot fight. We walk into the fire because someone has to." He pulled up a holographic display showing the galaxy. The Zenthari Dominion glowed red, spreading across a quarter of known space. They had conquered 60 species in 3 centuries. No one had stopped them. No one had tried. "The Zenthari believe they are unstoppable," Marcus said. "They believe the Council will always choose tribute over war. They are right. The Council will not fight them." He pointed at the blue dot that represented Earth. "But we will." Admiral Chen studied the display. "What about after, sir? If we win, the Council will not forgive us for acting alone. We will have made enemies of both the Zenthari and the powers that were supposed to protect us." Marcus smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Let me worry about that. Right now, our only concern is the Malorians. They are gentle people who have never harmed anyone. The Zenthari will enslave them, harvest their world, and move on to the next conquest, unless someone stops them." He looked at each of his admirals in turn. "I will not order you to do this. This is not a sanctioned operation. If we fail, Earth will deny all knowledge of our fleet. Your families will be told you died in accidents. Your names will be erased from history. You will be ghosts fighting a war that never officially happened." No one moved. No one spoke. "But if we succeed," Marcus continued, "we will show the galaxy what humans really are. Not the frightened children they think we are. Not the primitive species they laugh at. We will show them the truth that our ancestors understood. Monsters are not born. They are made." and humanity has been making monsters for a very long time. Admiral Jackson stepped forward. My pilots are ready to fly, sir. Give us a target. One by one, the other admirals voiced their agreement. Ready. 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 Marcus felt pride swelling in his chest. These were his people. This was his species. Flawed, violent, contradictory but brave. Always brave. Then we launch in 72 hours. The Xanthari will be massing at the Verath system, preparing for their invasion. We will meet them there. He turned to face the fleet one more time. Hundreds of ships built in secret, crewed by soldiers who would never receive medals, fighting a war the galaxy would never acknowledge. There is an old human saying, Marcus said quietly. Be careful when fighting monsters, or you may become one yourself. Our ancestors understood that warning. They wrote it into every story, every myth, every legend. They knew that sometimes, to protect the innocent, good people must become terrible. He pressed a button on his console. Throughout the hidden shipyards of Europa, Titan, and Luna, alarms began to sound. Engineers ran to their stations. Pilots climbed into their cockpits. Soldiers checked their weapons one final time. The council laughed at our myths, Marcus said. They will learn their mistake. Wake the old gods. The monsters are going to war. Across Earth's secret empire, humanity's hidden fleet began to stir. Engines that had never been fired roared to life. Weapons that had never been tested powered up. Soldiers who had trained their entire lives for a battle that might never come prepared to fight. In the cold darkness of space, something ancient and terrible was waking, and it was hungry. Supreme Commander Zarveth of the Xanthari Dominion stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his fleet gather in the Verath system. 800 warships, each one carrying enough firepower to burn a continent. The largest invasion force the Dominion had assembled in a century. In 3 days, they would jump to Malorian space. In 3 weeks, the Malorians would be slaves. In 3 months, their world would be stripped of resources and abandoned. It was how the Dominion operated. It was how they had conquered 60 species. Zarveth's second officer approached. Commander, sensors detect strange readings at the edge of the system. Define strange. Gravity distortions. Small ones. They appear and disappear randomly. Zarveth dismissed the concern with a wave of his armored hand. Cosmic interference. The Verath system has unstable asteroid fields. It means nothing. Yes, Commander. But the strange readings continued. They appeared near asteroids, inside dust clouds, even within the corona of the system's star, places where ships could not hide, places where physics said nothing could survive. Then the readings stopped. For exactly 3 seconds, Zarveth's sensors showed nothing unusual. Then space itself seemed to tear open. Ships emerged from impossible locations, from inside asteroid fields, from within the star's burning atmosphere, from points in space that should have crushed any vessel to atoms. They came in formations that made no sense, not lines or wedges, but swirling patterns like predators circling prey. Commander. The sensor officer's voice cracked with fear. 300 contacts. Unknown design. They are everywhere. Zarveth stared at his display. The human ships were smaller than his, fewer in number. By every measure of military logic, they should not have been a threat, but they had appeared from nowhere. They had done something impossible. Identify those vessels, he ordered. Running analysis. A pause. Commander, the hull signatures match no known species. Wait, there is a partial match. Terran design elements. These are human ships. Humans. Zarveth almost laughed. The primitives who worship monsters. This is their fleet? Yes, Commander. Then this will be easier than I thought. All ships, attack formation. Destroy them. 800 Xanthari warships began to move. They had fought 100 battles. They had never lost. They did not expect to lose today. The humans attacked first. The Fenrir destroyers struck without warning. One moment they were distant specks on Xanthari sensors. The next moment they were inside the formation, releasing weapons that should not exist. Gravity wells collapsed around Xanthari engines. Ships that had been moving forward suddenly fell backward, pulled by invisible forces into their own allies. Zarveth watched 3 of his cruisers collide with each other. Their shields meant nothing. Their armor meant nothing. They simply crashed together like toys thrown by a child. What is happening? he demanded. What weapons are those? No one could answer him. The Valkyrie fighters came next. They moved in patterns that no computer could predict because they were not following computers. The pilots were connected directly to their ships, thinking and reacting faster than any program. They flew through gaps in Zenthari formations that existed for only seconds. They fired weapons and were gone before anyone could target them. A Valkyrie pilot named Sarah Chen flew her fighter between two Zenthari battleships. Her neural link showed her every possible path through the chaos of battle. She chose the impossible one, the path that required perfect timing, perfect reflexes, perfect faith in her own abilities. She released her missiles at point-blank range and pulled up so hard that her body screamed in protest. The missiles struck both battleships in their engines. Sarah did not look back. She was already hunting her next target. The Leviathan carriers held the center of the human formation. They absorbed punishment that would have destroyed smaller ships. When Zenthari fighters attacked them, waves of human marines launched into space in armored suits, meeting the enemy in close combat. Lieutenant Commander David Osei led his marines against a Zenthari boarding party. The aliens were larger, stronger, covered in natural armor. They expected easy prey. They did not expect humans to fight with such fury. David's people had trained for this moment their entire lives. They knew they were outnumbered. They knew they might die. They did not care. Human history was filled with last stands against impossible odds. This was just one more. David drove his combat blade through a Zenthari warrior's throat and kept moving. Behind him, his marines followed, screaming war cries in a dozen languages. Some of them fell. Those who remained fought harder. On the bridge of his flagship, Zarveth began to understand that something was wrong. His fleet had superior numbers. His ships had superior firepower. By every calculation, he should be winning. But humans did not fight like other species. When a human ship was damaged, it did not retreat. It kept fighting until it could not move. When a human pilot was wounded, they did not eject. They stayed in their cockpits until their hearts stopped. When a human crew faced certain death, they pointed their crippled vessel at the nearest enemy and accelerated. They are insane, Zarveth whispered. A Leviathan carrier, its hull torn open by Zenthari weapons, did not try to escape. Instead, it turned directly towards Zarveth's command ship. Its engines burned at maximum power. Its crew could have evacuated. They did not. Evade! Zarveth screamed. Evade! His ship turned too slowly. The dying carrier struck them at full speed. The explosion destroyed both vessels and took 7 other Zenthari ships with them. Far away, on Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council watched the battle through long-range sensors. They had gathered in emergency session when the human fleet appeared. Now they sat in horrified silence. High Arbiter Keth Voran observed a human pilot whose fighter had lost its weapons. The pilot did not retreat. Instead, she manually armed a nuclear warhead stored in her cargo bay, pointed her ship at a Zenthari dreadnought, and flew directly into its engine core. In her final seconds, she transmitted on an open channel. She was screaming something in an ancient language. The Council's translators could not identify it. Ambassador Elena Vasquez, watching from Earth, recognized it immediately. It was Old Norse. A Viking battle cry, 3,000 years old. What is wrong with them? A Varathi delegate asked. Why do they not surrender? Why do they not retreat? Elena's voice came through the communication link. Because surrender is not in our nature. Because retreat means letting others die in our place. Because we would rather burn than kneel. But they are losing ships. They are losing people. Yes. And they will keep fighting until they win, or until none of them are left. That is what humans do. That is what we have always done. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Zenthari 7th Fleet no longer existed. 800 warships had been reduced to debris. Supreme Commander Zarveth was dead, his flagship torn apart by a dying carrier's final charge. The humans had lost 120 ships, 40% of their fleet, thousands of lives. They called it a victory. On the bridge of the surviving Leviathan carrier, Admiral Marcus Stone looked at the wreckage floating through space. Human wreckage and Zenthari wreckage mixed together, impossible to separate. Send a message to the Dominion, he said quietly. Tell them their fleet has been destroyed. Tell them the Malorians are under our protection. Tell them if they want war, we will give them war. And the Council, sir? Marcus smiled. It was a tired smile, full of grief and pride. Let them watch. Let them see what human monsters look like. Let them understand what we were trying to tell them. He looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Galactic Council was learning a lesson they should have learned long ago. Humans did not invent monsters because they were afraid. They invented monsters because they needed something to become, and today, they had become exactly what the galaxy feared. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going on for 16 hours. No one had left. No one had eaten. No one could stop watching the reports coming in from the Vareth system. 800 Zenthari warships destroyed. The most powerful invasion fleet in recent history wiped out by a species the Council had dismissed as primitive children. It was impossible. It was terrifying. It was changing everything. High Arbiter Keth Voran had watched every moment of the battle. He had seen human ships charge into certain death. He had seen human pilots fly their crippled fighters into enemy engines. He had seen the crew of a dying carrier refuse to evacuate, choosing instead to use their ship as a weapon one final time. He had seen monsters. We must respond, the Vorathi delegate was saying. The humans acted without council authorization. They committed an act of war. They must be punished. Punished. An Moravian counselor's crystal body flickered with agitation. You saw what they did. You want to punish that? They violated galactic law. They destroyed an invasion fleet that we were too cowardly to face. Arguments erupted across the chamber. 400 species shouting at each other in 10,000 languages. Fear made them loud. Confusion made them angry. No one knew what to do. Kethvoran raised his hand for silence. Slowly, the chamber quieted. I will speak with the human ambassador, he announced. Alone, the private meeting room was small compared to the main chamber. Kethvoran arrived first. He stood by the window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships were still burning. Human bodies were still floating in the void. The door opened. Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked in. She looked the same as she had 3 months ago, when she had stood before the council and asked for membership in the Defensive Pact. The same calm face, the same simple uniform, the same quiet confidence that Kethvoran had mistaken for ignorance. High Arbiter, she said. You wanted to speak with me. Your people are dangerous, Kethvoran said. You realize this? Yes. You attacked a sovereign power without council permission. You started a war that could engulf the entire galaxy. The Zenthari were going to destroy the Malorians. The council was going to let them. Kethvoran turned to face her. His metal features could not show expression, but his voice carried something new. Something that might have been uncertainty. We were negotiating. These things take time. The Zenthari do not negotiate. They take. They have been taking for 3 centuries because no one has been willing to stop them. The council pays tribute and calls it diplomacy. You let species die and call it careful consideration. And you think you can do better? A species that barely discovered space travel a few decades ago? Elena smiled. It was the same smile she had worn when she left the council chamber 3 months ago. The smile that Kethvoran now realized had been hiding something terrible. We do not think we can do better, she said. We know we fight differently than you. We fight like we have nothing to lose because for most of our history, we had nothing. We fight without surrender because surrender meant death. We fight to the last breath because our ancestors learned that the universe does not reward cowards. Your ancestors were primitive. They believed in magic and gods and monsters. Yes, and those beliefs kept them alive. Kethvoran was silent for a long moment. Then he asked the question that had been burning in his mind since the battle began. Why? Why do you fight this way? It defies all logic. You take losses that would break any other species. You sacrifice yourselves without hesitation. What drives you? Elena walked to the window and stood beside him. She looked out at the same stars he had been watching. You looked at our myths and saw primitive fear, she said softly. You missed the point entirely. Our ancestors did not invent monsters because they were afraid of the dark. They invented monsters because they knew the truth about the universe. What truth? That the universe is hostile. That survival requires more than intelligence and technology. That sometimes, to protect what you love, you must become the thing that nightmares fear. She turned to face him directly. Every dragon in our stories was a lesson in courage. Every demon taught us about temptation. Every hero who died in battle showed our children that some things are worth dying for. Our myths were not fantasy, High Arbiter. They were training, Survival manuals disguised as bedtime stories. Training for what? For this. For the moment when something terrible threatens innocent people, and someone has to stand against it. For the choice between safety and sacrifice. For the war that every generation of humans has fought in one form or another. Keith Voran processed her words. His ancient mind, enhanced by millions of years of technology, struggled to understand. You turned yourselves into weapons. We turned ourselves into protectors. There is a difference. Is there? I watched your pilots fly into certain death laughing. I watched your soldiers charge enemies twice their size without hesitation. That is not protection. That is madness. No, Elena said quietly. That is love. Love for comrades who are still fighting. Love for civilians who cannot fight. Love for a universe that does not love us back but deserves to be protected anyway. She pulled out a small device and activated it. A holographic star map appeared between them. 3 points glowed bright blue. These are our other fleets, Elena said. Hidden until now. Positioned at strategic points throughout Zenthari space. Keth Voran's metal body went still. You have more ships? We have been building for 20 years, High Arbiter. Did you really think we would send everything we had to one battle? If you attack the Dominion directly, it will be total war. Millions will die. Yes, unless you help us prevent it. Help you? Elena deactivated the map. Earth does not want war with the Dominion. We do not want war with anyone. We want what we asked for 3 months ago. Full membership in the Defensive Pact. Mutual protection for all allied species. And the Council stops appeasing conquerors. You are blackmailing us. I am offering you a choice. The same choice we offered before. The only difference is that now you know what we are capable of. Keth Voran turned away from her. He had lived for thousands of years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched species evolve and die. He thought he understood power, but he had never seen anything like humans. What happens if we refuse? He asked. Then we finish what we started. We fight the Dominion alone. We probably lose. But we will hurt them badly enough that they will never threaten anyone again, and the galaxy will remember what humans were willing to sacrifice for people who were not even our own species. You would die for strangers. We would die for anyone who needed us. That is what our monsters taught us to do. Keth Voran was silent for a very long time. Finally, he turned back to face her. You are terrifying creatures, Ambassador. I do not understand you. I do not think I ever will. You do not have to understand us. You just have to decide whether you want us fighting beside you or fighting alone. Because either way, we are fighting. The High Arbiter looked at this small human woman. She was fragile compared to him, short-lived, limited in so many ways, and yet she frightened him more than any enemy he had ever faced. I will bring your terms to the Council, he said. I cannot promise they will accept. Then remind them of something, Elena said. Every story about monsters ends the same way. High Arbiter. The monster always comes back. We are offering to be your monsters, to stand between you and the darkness. But if you refuse, we will still be monsters. Just not yours. She walked toward the door. Ambassador, Keth Voran called after her. One question. She stopped but did not turn around. Do you really believe you can win? Against the Dominion? Against anyone who threatens the galaxy? Elena looked back at him over her shoulder. Her smile was ancient and terrible. We are humans. High Arbiter. Winning is not the point. Fighting is the point. Standing up is the point. We may lose. We may all die. But we will never stop fighting. That is the promise our ancestors made in their stories. That is the promise we keep. She left him alone with his thoughts. Keth Voran stood in the empty room for a long time, looking out at the stars. Somewhere among those distant lights, human ships were waiting. Human soldiers were preparing. Human monsters were ready to fight. For the first time in his long existence, the High Arbiter of the Synth hegemony felt something he had not experienced in millennia. He felt uncertain, and beneath that uncertainty, something even more disturbing. He felt hope. 1 year had passed since the Battle of Vareth. 1 year since the galaxy learned what humans really were. Everything had changed. The Zenthari Dominion had sued for peace 3 months after their fleet was destroyed. They had tried to rebuild, to launch a counterattack against Earth, but they found human ships waiting at every turn. Ships that appeared from impossible locations. Ships crewed by soldiers who would not surrender. ships that fought with a fury the Dominion had never seen. For the first time in 3 centuries, the conquerors learned what it felt like to be afraid. The peace treaty was signed on neutral ground. The Xanthari gave up claims to 17 star systems. They freed the species they had enslaved. They paid reparations to the Malorians and to every other people they had wronged. They did all of this because they knew the alternative. The alternative was fighting humans. Earth's fleets now patrolled the borders of known space, not as conquerors, not as rulers, as protectors. When raiders attacked merchant ships, human destroyers responded. When warlords threatened peaceful worlds, human carriers arrived. When anyone cried for help, humans answered. 17 species had joined Earth's alliance. Some were powerful, most were small and weak, the kind of people the old council would have ignored. They flew ships built from human designs and fought using human tactics. They told human stories to their children. The Galactic Council still existed, but it was different now. Humans sat at the table as full members. When they spoke, people listened. Not because humans were the strongest, not because they were the smartest, because everyone had seen what they were willing to sacrifice for strangers. On the anniversary of the Battle of Varath, a cultural summit was held on Nexus Prime. Representatives from 100 species gathered to discuss art and literature and history. For the first time, humans were asked to present their culture to the galaxy. Admiral Marcus Stone attended as a guest. He had retired from active command 6 months earlier. His hair was white now. His body carried the weight of everything he had seen and done, but his eyes were still sharp, still full of the fire that had led humans to war. He sat in the back of the presentation hall, watching as human scholars explained their myths to an audience of aliens. They showed images of dragons and gods and heroes. They told stories of warriors who fought against impossible odds. They explained the meaning behind each legend. The aliens did not laugh this time. A young Moravian approached Marcus after the presentation. She was small, her crystal body barely reaching his chest. Her colors shifted with curiosity and nervousness. "Admiral Stone?" she asked. Her voice chimed like tiny bells. "Yes, I am studying human culture at the Academy. I have a question, if you do not mind." Marcus smiled at her. It was a kind smile, nothing like the fierce expression he had worn in battle. "Ask, humans really believed in monsters? In dragons and demons and spirits? Our ancestors did, yes. A long time ago. But they knew these things were not real. They must have known." Marcus was quiet for a moment. He looked out the window at the stars. So many stars. So many worlds. So many people who needed protection. "Let me tell you something about human stories," he said finally. "We never really believed the monsters were real. Not the way you think. We knew there were no dragons hiding in caves. No demons waiting in the dark. Then why did you tell these stories? Because the monsters were not the point. The heroes were the point. The stories taught our children that darkness exists, yes. That terrible things happen. But they also taught them that someone can stand against the darkness. Someone can fight the monsters. Someone can protect the innocent." He looked down at the young alien. "We did not believe in monsters because we were afraid. We believed in monsters because we needed to believe we could defeat them. Every story was a promise that no matter how dark things got, there would always be someone willing to fight, willing to sacrifice, willing to become whatever was necessary to protect others." The Moravian's colors shifted to something softer. "And at the Battle of Varath, your people became the monsters?" "No," Marcus said gently. "We became the heroes. The monsters were never the creatures in our stories. The monsters were us. The monsters were what we could become when someone we loved was in danger. When innocent people needed protection. When the darkness came and someone had to push it back. But you lost so many people. So many ships." "Yes, we did." His voice grew heavier. "I remember every one of them. Every pilot who flew into enemy fire. Every Marine who charged into battle. Every crew member who chose to stay with their ship instead of escaping. I will remember them until I die. Do you regret it?" Marcus thought about the question. He thought about Sarah Chen, the Valkyrie pilot who had died taking out 2 enemy battleships. About David Osei, the Marine commander who had held a boarding position for 6 hours until reinforcements arrived. About the captain of the Leviathan carrier who had ordered his crew to evacuate and then rammed his ship into the Xanthari flagship. "No," he said. "I do not regret it. They knew what they were doing. They chose to fight. They chose to sacrifice themselves for people they had never met, for a species that was not their own. That is what humans do. That is what our stories taught us to do. The young alien was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked one more question. Will you tell me a story? A human story? I want to understand. Marcus smiled. He sat down on a bench near the window and patted the space beside him. The Ak Moravian climbed up and settled next to him. There is an old story, he began, about a warrior named Beowulf. He lived in a time of darkness, when monsters roamed the earth and people lived in fear. A creature called Grendel was attacking a great hall, killing innocent people every night. No one could stop it. No one would even try. What did Beowulf do? He traveled across the sea to fight Grendel. Not for gold, not for glory, because someone had to protect the people in that hall. He fought the monster with his bare hands and tore off its arm. When Grendel's mother came seeking revenge, Beowulf tracked her to her underwater lair and killed her too. And when he was old, when a dragon threatened his kingdom, he fought it even though he knew he would die. Because that was what heroes did. They fought the monsters so others would not have to. The young alien's colors pulsed with emotion. Did Beowulf survive? He killed the dragon, but he died from his wounds. His people buried him on a cliff overlooking the sea and told his story for 1,000 years. That is a sad ending. Is it? Beowulf lived a life of purpose. He protected the innocent. He fought against darkness. He died doing what he believed was right. Humans do not measure heroes by whether they survive. We measure them by whether they stand up when it matters. Marcus looked out at the stars one more time. That is what our myths really taught us. Not to fear the darkness, not to run from monsters. They taught us that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. That courage is a choice anyone can make. That sacrifice has meaning, even when no one is watching. The summit continued for 3 more days. Humans shared their stories with the galaxy. They showed their art and music and literature. They explained why their species had filled its history with tales of gods and monsters and heroes. By the end, something had changed. The aliens who had laughed at human myths now studied them with new respect. They began to understand what humans had known all along. Stories were not just entertainment. Stories were instructions. They were promises. They were the way one generation taught the next how to be brave. A year after the summit, a museum ship began traveling between worlds. It carried human art and artifacts. It showed human films and played human music. On its hull, in every known language, were words that had become famous throughout the galaxy. Those who forget that humans dream of dragons forget that humans also dream of slaying them. The galaxy had laughed at human myths. They had called humans primitive and foolish and afraid. They did not understand that those myths were not weakness. They were a warning. Humans had been preparing for the darkness since their first ancestor looked up at the stars and wondered what was watching back. Every story, every legend, every bedtime tale about monsters under the bed had been training for this moment. The moment when humanity stepped onto the galactic stage and showed everyone what they really were. Not children afraid of the dark. Not primitives worshipping imaginary gods. They were the descendants of dragon slayers and demon hunters and god killers. They were the children of warriors who had faced impossible odds and refused to surrender. They were the inheritors of 100,000 years of survival against everything the universe could throw at them. They were humans, and the galaxy would never laugh at them again.